Hey, it's Carrie.
And Ashley.
We welcome you to the Self-Care Cafe. We are both health professionals and moms and nature lovers and food lovers and love helping women get over dieting and just start living. We think that talking about bodies and perfect bodies and dieting is just boring.
Did we put you to sleep there, Carrie?
Yes. So if you are ready to ditch dieting and get to living and talk about more important things, then you are in the right place. We don't put shame and guilt on the menu here. You don't even have to tip us.
Nope.
Come hang with us. The advice is free. We want to have a bunch of girlfriends to just hang out with and get real with. And it's time to start living, ladies.
Hello, Carrie.
Hey, Ashley.
How are you?
I'm good. All together now.
You're great.
Oh, so what have we got on the menu today?
So let's talk about holiday food stuff.
That's a great one. And because a lot of times we don't discuss holiday stuff until Thanksgiving, right? Like the official start of the holiday season. But we thought it would be better to start like our unofficial start of the holidays, which was with Halloween, because there's so much candy and with that comes some anxiety and stress.
Yes, for sure. I always think about that. I'm like, everyone struggles with, lots of different things around the holidays, and food is one of them. And why aren't we talking about it sooner? Because Halloween candy is such a big deal for a lot of people too. And not only for us as moms, parents, adults, but also for how to deal with it with our kids too. And we'll kind of chat about a little bit of everything, I think, today around the food piece with the holidays.
Yeah, for sure. And the earlier you start it, it gives you more practice before like holiday season's really in full swing.
Right.
So, yeah, because there's so many different parties and gatherings. Um, and what do we like? We both have seen and we both have felt it ourselves too, right? That just like, oh my gosh, there's so much,
Yes.
so much, and how do I
Yes.
handle this? And and then also how do we handle it with our kids? Like, do we just let them, gorge themselves on candy? Like how? I know you've got some great advice around this, so
Yeah. And I think that I'd like to put a little disclaimer. This is all just suggestions and advice based on our experiences, other people experiences, kind of an intuitive eating approach. But please do what you feel is best for yourself and your family, because it's easy for us to say some of the things that we do because we're doing them. And not everyone's ready for that, and that's okay. And sometimes it's just starting to think about things in a different way. Like Carrie and I tend to say that we plant seeds a lot around different mindsets. So just keep that in mind.
yeah, and keep an open mind too. Like maybe there's something like, well, I just don't. There's no way that'll work. We sometimes we jump to that conclusion, right? There's no way that will work because and we give all these reasons. But sometimes if you stop and just kind of keep an open mind and think, okay, or maybe part of what we're saying will work or help you or whatever. So, yeah, thank you for saying.
Exactly. And I like, again, if you listen to the podcast, you all know that I love experiments. And so that's one thing to think about too. Like, if what I'm doing is stressful to me and it doesn't seem to be working for me anymore, what am I willing to try? Or is there one thing that I could do differently or think about differently, and how might that look?
Right. And life is always changing. So what is working right now down the road may no longer work for you,
Exactly.
depending on your life circumstances. So being willing to always be open to changing and trying new things that may work better.
Yeah. So around holidays,
Mhm.
people are feeling lots of things, right, Carrie?
Yeah. Can you
Yeah.
say stressed? Of course, what is stressed backwards? Desserts.
Yes, and sometimes we're stressed about desserts. And
Exactly.
sometimes we're stressed about the food in general, or we're stressed about a lot of times we're overscheduled, we're overwhelmed, we're not getting the rest we need because we're staying up late trying to work on things, gifts, party planning, um, any of that.
Yeah, the holidays, like there's all this extra on top of our normal, right? Like life
Right.
isn't busy enough. Now let's add let's add holiday parties and the stress and the spending the money and gifts and then if you don't do that then there's the guilt over it's like there's so much we put so much on ourselves and
Yes,
there's so many ways that conversation could go. uh,
exactly.
but in general, a lot of us do feel more stressed out around the holidays
Mhm.
for many reasons. Um, and feeling like you have to do it all and do it all yourself.
Yes. And
Really
when,
kind of an overarching theme of it.
exactly. And when we are stressed like that, our self-care goes right down the tubes because we're
Mm.
prioritizing this like
Mhm.
newish kind of priority about gifts and figuring out holiday stuff, and we're putting everything else that we're doing on the back burner. So we tend not to be meal planning as well, or we tend to skip out on our movement that makes us feel better, or we tend to skip out on our sleep, or any number of things.
Right. Right. Yes, for sure. Like self-care goes right out the window, tends to over the holidays.
And what's ironic about that, Carrie?
And the irony is that's the time of year you need it the most.
Exactly.
And if you already engage in like self-care, like routines and whatever practices, it's how much better you feel when you're doing it, right?
Right.
So maybe and it's really important to get out of the all or nothing mindset through the holidays. It's like, okay, so you can't get your full workout in. So what? Do 10 minutes,
Yep.
right? Like take what you've got. Maybe you can't sit and soak in a tub for 30 minutes. Soak in it for 10. Like that 10-minute thing is kind of like my favorite. Like there's like
Mhm.
just enough. Like who can't do something for 10 minutes, right?
Right.
So just short, make it smaller. I mean, obviously, we all only have 24 hours to a day, period. Like, so how we fill it is up to us. And if you're letting all your self-care practices be put on the back burner through the holiday season, you're going to burn out. You're not going to feel as good.
And you won't get to enjoy
Right.
the time, the holidays with your family, friends, or whoever you spend it with, or
Mhm.
even just yourself. Like it'll just be miserable.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and let's make that another podcast, like for how to get out of the all or nothing mindset. Ashley's making the note in our file. Because I think that's that could be an entire
Yeah.
trying another episode trying to get out of that mindset.
Yeah, I think so too.
Um, so a big part of going back to like the food around the holidays, right? Would you say, Ash, that like a lot of it is so many times we don't trust ourselves around all of it, and that's the cause
Yes.
of
I
a lot of
think
stress?
definitely there's a lot of pieces to it, but I think that is probably like the base layer of it, or
Mhm.
one of the base layers of it.
Mhm.
Because most of us probably don't allow ourselves to eat most of the foods that are out and about during the holidays. Um,
Mhm.
or maybe we do, but not in the like quantities that are available during holiday season. And so it's very easy to go into holidays saying, oh, I'm not going to have XYZ, whatever food, because I don't typically eat it. But then we're constantly bombarded with it. It's everywhere. It's accessible. It's right in your face. And it's really easy to then have that out of control feeling around food.
Right. So explain a little bit more what you mean by that. So when you restrict, how does that work? Because like if someone restricts or like they don't allow themselves to eat something,
Mhm.
then what does so it sets off this domino effect, right? Of things
Yeah.
that happen.
Yeah. Because what's the first thing that we think when someone tells us we can't do something?
I want it.
Exactly. And actually, Carrie, I just was looking this up because I figured there had to be a name for this phenomenon, for this behavior. And I found that it's called the reactance theory in
Uh-huh.
psychology.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't know if you've seen that in your studies, but I think it makes sense. It's like when we feel that our free choice is threatened, even if it's something we're doing to ourselves,
Mhm.
um, we tend to rebel against that a little bit because we want to keep our independence and our like free choice. And so when we tell ourselves or someone tells us we can't do or have something, then our mind sort of shifts into that's all we can think about, or it's at least bubbling on the top layer of our brain for a long time.
Right.
Um, and so, yeah, when we restrict, it gets back into that all or nothing. The restriction is you can't have that. That's the nothing piece. And then at some point, we're going to shift like a pendulum into the all phase, which is I'm going to eat it all. I'm probably not even going to realize what I'm doing while I'm doing it sometimes. Or maybe I won't even enjoy it because I just have that like primal urge to just eat it all because I've been telling myself I can't have it or I shouldn't have it. And so we get into this like, I don't even know what happened or I don't know what I was thinking or feeling when this like episode of eating too much or even sometimes binge eating happened.
Right. And I love that, like when you said, whether someone else has told you not to think about it or you are telling yourself, I'm not even gonna think about that food. Like I'm not, I'm gonna put it out of my mind. I'm not gonna think about it. What is like, that's like saying, if I tell you, don't you think about it, don't you think about that white elephant.
Right.
Don't think about a white elephant.
Right. It's the only thing I can picture in my brain right now.
Right. White elephant, white elephant, white elephant. Right.
I'm gonna
And
be
that's
thinking about that later. Thanks.
and that's what Ashley's saying is like when okay, like I'm gonna put the food away and I'm not gonna think about it. Oh, yes, you are.
Yes.
It's like it's probably the only thing that you're gonna think about, or you're just gonna keep coming back to, because like I do that too. It's like, I could really go for fresh pop popcorn,
Mhm.
something like that. It's like, I don't know. I don't feel like making it. And then he said there's like, I really want. So like for an
Yep.
hour will go by, like, oh fine, I'm just gonna make it.
Right.
It's like sometimes it's like I don't it's just so hard to get it out of there. So what Ashley's saying is when you have a food that you want, let's say like at Christmas time, I make my Graham's Christmas cookie recipe.
Mhm.
And they are so freaking good. And it's probably the only time of year I make it. Sometimes I make them at Valentine's too. Um, but it's a sugar cookie recipe with nutmeg and sour cream in it. So they're like puffier, but they are just so good. And I've always can't wait, for Christmas when I make these. And there's no way, like, and it's the only time. So I allow myself to indulge in them
Right. And you
because
go ahead.
that is the only time of year that I'm going to get them. Now, with that said, it's also easy to overindulge in them.
Right. Yeah. It's that whole like food scarcity mindset that you're describing because I know I'm only going to get, well, there's a couple different pieces to this, right? Like, I know that this is the only time I'm going to get them. So I'm going to feel like I need to eat them all now.
Right.
Um, because even if you have them for like a week, or if you make a couple batches of them over the Christmas holiday, like you said, it's still only a short amount of time. And so they're fun, they're appealing. You don't have them all the time. So we have that, like, they have that power over us, I guess, right? Like we feel drawn to them because we aren't going to have them again. And when we know that, that's when food is powerful or is extra appealing or is extra fun. It's when we can have it all of the time and our body knows that it's like, oh, that's not that exciting anymore. Like, for example.
Oh, can I just interject for a second?
Yes.
The other piece of that too is that there's an emotional aspect to it because it's
Yes.
my grandmother's recipe.
Exactly.
And I have my grandmother's cookie sheets that she baked those cookies on. So
Yeah.
there's this emotional connection to it too. So
Yes.
it's like
Yes.
it just brings up those memories and it's warm and fuzzy and it feels good and they
Exactly.
you
Yeah.
know. So I just want to interject that there's
For sure.
also, for especially a lot of special family recipes, there
Hmm.
is some sort of an emotional connection to that as well.
Definitely. And I think there's definitely a thing called emotional hunger. Like there's a lot of different types of hunger. Maybe we'll do a podcast on that also. But that's one of them is that emotional piece. Like maybe I'm not hungry per se
Mhm.
physically, but I know that I want to feel that emotional connection to my grandmother because I'm missing her. And so I'm going to make these cookies and then I'm going to eat them. Um, and one other piece too is sometimes we can like deal with that food scarcity mindset by having these foods around more. So the example I was going to share is um we love ice cream, but I just had to throw away a couple, what do they come in? Half-gallon containers or whatever, I don't even know. Because they were like freezer burnt because we didn't finish them. They were sitting in my freezer since beginning of summer when we bought them. And yeah, we had some here and there, but because we have it most of the time, we didn't feel like we had to eat it all up.
Yeah, there's no urgency. Like I have,
Exactly.
right? Yes.
Exactly. But with the
Yes.
cookies, they're only around for those couple weeks. So we
Right.
feel that feeling, right? Like that urgency, like you said, or I have to get it now
Mhm.
because I'm only going to have them now. So one way to kind of deal with that is to have these foods throughout the year if that's something that makes sense. Like if you're making them, you could make them for multiple holidays.
Mhm. Yep.
Um and Carrie, that goes for you. You could do that or not. Like it's totally up to you. If you feel like it's a real and not I'm not talking to you specifically anymore, Carrie, but if you have a recipe like Carrie's talking about, make it more often and see how that goes. And the more you have it around, at one point, you might throw some away because you're like, I'm sick of these.
Right. Which is so opposite, isn't it? Than that what
Yes.
people say really because they're like, well, if I don't have it in the house, I won't eat it.
Right, right.
Right.
But
So
the
it's like
truth
this is
is,
a
yeah,
real shift in mindset
yeah,
because what Ashley is saying is the more it is around, the less appealing it is going to be.
right. And with
Um,
the mindset shift, right? I think that's the important piece that Carrie was just saying. Like, we can't just like chips. I hear a lot of people talking about not being able to stop eating chips, so they tend to not buy them or buy like the individual bags and only have them when they can't have more than one, like they bring it to work or something, and then they do okay. But with that being said, we have to work on the mindset piece because we can't just load up our house with chips and expect that we're going to do something different. We have to like work into that a little bit. And so having chips outside of the house where you can't have like full access is a great way to start because you can have chips every day. And then once you're kind of used to that and your body's like, oh, we're going to have this every day, they don't have to be quite so scary or quite so like appealing or powerful to us. Then maybe we can have them. I just threw a bag of chips away, half a bag. They were disgustingly stale.
we did too. Yeah. Same.
Yeah,
Uh, yeah. And a big piece of that also is trust in yourself, right? We've talked
right.
about this before. If you don't trust yourself with food, there's probably other areas of your life that you also don't trust yourself with or trust other people with. So that is also mindset work that needs to be done. So that's another, but that's a way, like Ashley just talked about, like to learn to trust yourself around food is to start with, having it so that if it's not in the house, have it go out to eat and have it Right.
Yeah, and work on how you think about it going into it. Like if you go to a restaurant that you know the menu well and there's something you typically avoid, um, is that the right food? Maybe try something a little bit less like triggering or scary. It depends on how you feel because I think sometimes if we just go for it, it can end badly and then we have another bad experience with that. So feel that out, but if you're comfortable, pick something that you typically wouldn't because you tell yourself you don't need it or shouldn't have it because you can't stop eating it. And just go into it with a different mindset. Like think about, I can have this every time we come here if I want to and see how that changes. Like, here's another good example I tell people a lot. If you are out to eat for a special occasion with people that you care about, maybe it's a birthday, anniversary, or whatever, and maybe you get a dessert, a really fancy, indulgent dessert at the restaurant, and maybe you have it by yourself, maybe you share it, but think about your thought process and feelings during that experience. Usually we're like, "Oh, it tastes so good. It's so rich, it's just delicious," like whatever the thought process might be. And then compare that to the same food or a similar food, but when we eat it at home and the
Mm,
differences between those 2 times. Usually
mhm.
when we're having something like that at home, it's almost maybe in secret. Maybe
Mm.
we eat a lot of it, but we don't even pay attention to how it tastes because we're too busy in our brain saying, "You can't have this, you shouldn't be doing this, why are you doing this?" Um, and so we're not getting the satisfaction from it like we are when we're out and allowing ourselves to have it because it's a special occasion, for example.
Right, because a lot of times the foods that we deny ourselves, when we do end up eating it, it's like we shove it in our faces so fast we're not even really tasting it and enjoying
Right.
it, right?
Right. Because we've been restricting it. Exactly.
So like one little exercise that I've done before is just take a square of chocolate, your favorite chocolate, and put it in your mouth and just let it sit there and let it melt and close your eyes and just use all your senses. Like, what does it feel like in your mouth? What does it taste like? What does it smell like? And just really savor it, right? Like, we don't savor moments enough. Um, and that might be all you need, right?
Right.
Versus you might take the whole entire bar um and eat all of it at once, right? Like it's taking the time to enjoy it.
Right. And
Um,
what Carrie's kind of describing is called mindful eating. So if you've heard of that before, that's sort of what Carrie's talking about is being mindful is just sort of like being in the present moment and just describing your observations. And the more you can be present and enjoy the chocolate in this example, the more satisfaction you're going to get from it. On the flip side, if you're going into eating the chocolate with, "I shouldn't have this," this other thought process, we're not savoring it. We're not paying attention to it. So we end up eating way more of it because we didn't get the feeling that we even ate it.
right. Or how many times like, well, I'm just gonna eat it all now so it's gone.
Right.
And
Mhm.
then I won't buy
Yep.
any, right? Instead
Mhm.
of just enjoy what you have, and you don't have to eat the whole thing right now. Enjoy it a little bit of it at a time.
Yep.
There's so many different ways to go about it, but these are just some ideas.
Definitely.
But Ash, so I'm wondering, so okay, our kids go trick or treating, they come home with all this candy.
Mhm. There's a lot of different ways to handle it.
Okay, you're
So
on.
so for my house, I'm just gonna use a personal example. This is what basically works for us. There's a lot of candy, obviously. It's just how it is. There's candy from when we went trick or treating. Maybe we have some left over from when we bought some for whoever or whatever. There's just a lot of candy going on. It's okay. Don't freak out about it.
Mhm.
What I've noticed from my stories and other people's experiences are the more anxious we are about these foods around, our kids pick up on that and they're like, "Oh no, mom's going to take this away from us. we better eat it all, right?
Yes.
Like it's
Yes.
gonna get restricted on me, so I
Yep.
need to eat it all. So we're instilling that fear of restriction in them when we do that. So at our house, like I was saying, we have the trick or treat bag or whatever out for a few days. It's exciting for a few days. We can pick and choose what we want. We can have a few pieces here or there after school, after dinner, whatever. Um, and then after those first few exciting days, I'll just kind of put it in the cupboard. I'm not trying to hide it, just kind of out of sight. So if my daughter remembers it and asks for it, yeah, you can have some. Um, but I just threw away a bunch of Halloween candy from last year. I will, and honestly, I picked through it more than she did for the stuff that I wanted.
Mhm.
Um, because I ate all the chocolate out of it and there was just like stuff I don't appreciate in it left. And some of it was absolutely gross when I threw it away too, so I wasn't even gonna
Right.
bother with it. And it's that whole like not restricted piece that we're talking about. It's out, we can have it when we want, so it's not exciting. And not to mention, she will share it with me. Like, I don't really have to ask for stuff. She's like,
Mhm.
"Oh, do you want some? Like, what do you want?" Or she knows what my favorites are and she offers me some. And people that are restricted would not probably do that.
Right.
Want
Because
to
they
like
want to keep it
keep
all
it.
for
Yeah,
themselves because they're used to it not being available to them,
right. And-
or not being available to them because of someone else's rules or because of the rules that you've put on yourself,
Right.
can't or shouldn't. Um, yeah, no, I love that. And I know this, those of you that are listening to this, it sounds so like you probably, so I know some of you are saying there's no friggin' way that's gonna work. No,
Right.
I can't trust myself. I'll just eat it all.
Yep.
But again, it begins with that mindset work, knowing that you can trust yourself. You can have this anytime. We
Yep.
live in a country, we can go down to the store and buy any of that candy anytime.
Exactly. And it might take a little while and it might be really hard at first.
Mhm.
It's not, it might not be the way you want it to be the first time. Um, or even with your kids this first time. I
Mhm.
think what's important is to let them trust their bodies too when we're talking about your kids because um if you let here's the other piece. It's like the flip side, right? Like yes, we can have it whenever we want, and that doesn't necessarily mean we're going to eat the whole bag of Kit Kats or whatever at a time if we're allowing ourselves to enjoy it, because are you really enjoying it after like 10 pieces? How are you
Hmm.
feeling? My belly's going to hurt. And that's your choice. Like, if you want to keep going after that because it tastes so good, you are going to understand the consequences of that.
Yeah, and I think it's a good lesson for kids too. I
Yes.
remember when one of my sons, I don't know, he was probably 7 or 8, and we had gone to Dunkin' Donuts, and he wanted to get 2 Boston cream donuts and one of those cookies and cream milkshake drinks or whatever.
Yeah.
And he's just this tiny little thing, and he stuffed his little body full of all of that. We stepped out of Dunkin' Donuts and he proceeded to barf all over the
Oh
sidewalk right
no.
there. But it was a lesson for him to realize. And he looked at me and goes, I guess I shouldn't have eaten all that,
Right?
all at once.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So,
now he can trust himself. Like, yes, I want to try all of those things.
mhm,
And maybe I'm not going to have them all at the same time. Like, maybe I'll still purchase all of those things. Maybe I'll save one donut for later. Maybe I'll only drink part of my shake instead of the whole thing. Like, that's the part of the trusting your body that we're talking about. We know what our limits are. And yes, we want to try all of the things, all of the Halloween candy, all of the exciting food that's at the holidays, treats, savory dishes, whatever, and we can know what our limits are. So when we're starting to get full, we can say, okay, I'm going to take a break here because my belly is starting to get uncomfortable and I don't want to eat more.
mhm,
Um, and I know I can have some later.
right. Right. Like people, there are doggy bags, like, box them up and take it home if you're at someone's house for the holidays. Or,
Right.
um, actually, I talked about this, like, if in sitting in front of a holiday spread and if there are family dishes that are primarily made that time of year, and you want to indulge in those or have those. And like then maybe the common foods that you have regularly throughout the year, like mashed potatoes, you skip so that you can comfortably eat the special occasion goodies.
Yes. I always tell or encourage people to kind of like, before you even pick up a plate, go look at it. Go look
Mhm.
at what's out there. If it's a buffet, if it's a whatever, just scope it out and pick the foods that you really want to have and skip the ones, like Carrie said, that we can have anytime. Because you can have them anytime and they're not as exciting to you probably either, right? Like you don't have to have it just because it's there.
Yeah, and sometimes we equate like in our heads, okay, like a turkey dinner is, the turkey, the mashed potatoes and gravy and stuffing, right? And it's this, I don't know, like a habit or a vision in our head that they just all naturally go together.
Right. The expectation.
Right. Um, and that's fine if that's does and that's what you want. But what we're saying is if there's like some special dishes, it's like, oh, I'm definitely going to have some of that, but I'm not sure I'm going to have room, or just take smaller amounts of all of it.
Right. Yes.
You'll get,
That's what my plate usually looks like. It's like a tiny spoon of this and a tiny spoon of that, but of everything.
right. Like, wait, there's no one way to do this, right or wrong. There's not anything like that. It's what is going to work for you.
Right. Exactly.
And taking away that feeling of urgency.
Right. And
That,
and a couple other things that can help too are when we are getting stressed about holiday stuff, like we talked about at the beginning, maybe our meal planning is out the window because we haven't had the time to even think about it. And so we're just winging it all the time. So if we go into these things a little bit more, I don't want to use the word well nourished, but I can't really think of a better way to say it. Like if we're fed on a
Mhm.
regular basis and we go into all of these food experiences when we have been eating consistently, it's going to be a lot easier for us to deal with. And I don't necessarily mean like the healthiest meals on the planet, but just having eaten enough on a regular basis over the past couple weeks beforehand, it's going to be a lot easier to make those choices and trust yourself.
Yeah, well, our brain just work better when it's fed, right? Like,
Exactly.
so, if you're someone who, and I've certainly been guilty of this, in the past, banking your calories, right? You're going to bank your calories. So you're not going to eat all day long because you have a holiday party in the evening. So you're going to save all your calories up for then. Well, by the time you get there, you're so hungry and you're tired and you're cranky and anything and everything looks good, right?
Exactly. It's no wonder that this happens to us because if we're not eating all day, we're starving by the time we get to this food party or whatever. I like that food party.
Party.
We're starving. Like there's no
Okay.
way that we're going to have rational decisions going into that because we're so not well fed. Like
Right.
we need to eat during the day to be able to make those more rational choices.
Mhm. Yeah, because another part of this, right, is if it's maybe a swankier party and you have
Mm,
the black dress and you want to fit into it,
yeah.
it's all these different things, right? That come into it. Oh, we could go on and on.
Yeah, we could. Just wear what's comfortable, first of all. Wear what's
Mhm.
comfortable. Nobody's hopefully paying that close of attention to what you look like. They're worried about themselves,
Right.
which is again another whole story for a whole nother day. And you don't want to be worrying about your outfit the whole time. You don't want your outfit cutting into you the whole time to remind you how miserable your body feels in that outfit. And then that dictates what your food choices are. Like it's this whole cycle.
It is for sure. Yeah, and then you haven't eaten all day, so now you're at the party and you're not going to eat anymore either because your outfit might get too tight or
Right. Yeah.
the things we do to ourselves.
Yes.
Anything else?
Oh, I don't know. We said so many things. I guess the bottom line is like changing the mindset about the food. Like we can have this anytime we want. And one thing that people might be wondering, I realize that we haven't even said anything about it, is like, well, won't I gain weight if I eat these types of foods over the holiday season or allow myself to have them on a regular basis or, shift our mindset to what you're telling us?
Yeah.
Um, I think I was doing some research last holiday season on holiday weight gain, and based on studies that people have done in the past, it's only what was it like 2 pounds average weight gain or something like that? But that's not even the point. Like, our bodies change. We can enjoy these experiences, and those experiences often include food, and that's okay. You're not going to make or break your health or nutrition with one meal or holiday season of enjoying yourself.
Yeah, and be careful, then you see headlines like, okay, well, maybe it's only 2 pounds, but every holiday season, if you gain 2 pounds and over, 5 years, that's 10 extra
Right.
pounds. Like, first of all, in order to gain a full pound of, let's say, fat, okay, that's 3,500 calories,
Hmm.
right? Extra. And so really what you're probably gaining, because over the holidays they tend to be more like simple carbs and higher
Salty
salt.
foods. Yep.
So it's
Alcohol. Let's not
probably,
forget that.
yeah, and alcohol. It's probably a lot of water weight
Yeah.
because it's hard to eat um that many extra calories so quickly.
Right. And like we were saying, if you're restricting yourself and then you're like, quote unquote, overdoing it and not feeling comfortable every time you go to a party or every time there's food around because you haven't been eating to save room for these foods, then we're eating too much at once. And that's not comfortable. And that can definitely,
Mhm.
you know, change things for your body. So, eating regularly, including the foods you want to include on a regular basis instead of like not eating and then we're going to end up overdoing it like that pendulum effect we talked about. Um, that isn't very helpful.
Right. Awesome. This was a great conversation. I'm sure we will get into it again.
Yes,
Some
maybe we'll
more,
talk
more.
about some other aspects of it.
Yes, for sure. But we would love to hear what you think. What is your experience with this? Do you have any questions? Maybe what's worked for you?
Yep.
We'd love all of your comments. So let us know.
Yeah.
And where can they find us, Ash?
Oh, we're everywhere. Um, we're
Here.
on Instagram and Facebook, and we have a Facebook group. And all of the links to that stuff are in the show notes. So you can go find us on Spotify. If you're listening on Spotify, there's a cool like Q&A section. So you can put questions or just comments
Yeah,
right on
definitely
each
use it.
episode. It's pretty cool.
Yes, yes, yes. Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, until next time,
Yes.
love you, latte.
Love you, latte.